Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for a different type of video than what we normally do. Today we'll be going over whether or not certain Templars and Assassin's Creed villains could survive or even defeat Ezio. We'll assume both sides are in their prime, fully prepared and not holding back. So this will be peak Ezio versus the best version of each villain. Before we get into the matchups, let's first go over the tiers and show you how I'll be ranking them. The lowest tier is Assassination Contract. The characters in this tier will be very easy for Ezio, basically a walk in the park. Ezio would deal with these characters as easily as he does in side contracts across the series. Only the weakest or easiest characters will go here. Following that, we have Minor Obstacle. These characters will be a small challenge. These are tougher than random guards, but still nothing Ezio hasn't handled before. The next one is Challenging. Ezio would struggle, but in the end he'd probably still come out on top. Think mid to late sequence targets. 50-50 is either the Templar or Ezio could win depending on the situation, and they'd survive Ezio is simple. This tier will include the Templars that could survive or even possibly kill him. So with that being said, if you liked this video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe since I make tons of Assassin's Creed content like this. With that being said, let's get right into it. The first villain we have is Charles Lee. Charles Lee is quite possibly the GOAT at running away from danger, maybe just behind Cesare. Lee is, I'd say, an above average Templar. On paper, he should be very skilled. He's a soldier, a general, and was even trained by Haytham Kenway, so this guy should be quite resourceful. However, as we saw in Assassin's Creed 3, he is all talk and never actually fights back unless he has you severely outnumbered or at a disadvantage. He isn't a weak dude. We saw him fight and defeat guards in the Haytham sections, but do we really think Ezio can't put this guy down? Charles Lee wouldn't surprise him in my opinion. He'd probably try to outmaneuver Ezio or hide behind his men, but Ezio has hunted down people like Rodrigo Borgia and the Pazzi conspirators, so I think he has what it takes to defeat Lee. So yeah, he's staying in the minor obstacle tier. Next, we got Cesare Borgia, one of Ezio's most iconic enemies and probably his hardest opponent. Cesare is a good matchup because unlike most Templars, he actually had charisma, resources, and ambition to build an empire. He's a skilled fighter, commands armies, and is pretty ruthless. He does have problems like his ego, and Ezio could exploit it. Cesare's arrogance is not very helpful and could screw him over. We saw in Brotherhood that Ezio had to chase Cesare across multiple sequences, and every time Ezio almost had him, Cesare escaped, either through cunning or pure luck. But when it comes to a direct confrontation, Cesare couldn't stand up to Ezio. Cesare relies heavily on his soldiers and power to keep control. Once those are gone, he is a coward, kind of like Charles Lee from before. Ezio did defeat Cesare canonically, but it did take a while and it wasn't a one and done fight. So my verdict for this matchup would be challenging. Next up, we have Élise de la Serre, and yeah, let's be honest, this one is not going to last long. Élise is confident and loyal to the Templar Order, but she's not on Ezio's level in combat or stealth. Ezio's faced dozens of people like her throughout his life. Assassination Contract. Now here we have an interesting matchup, Deimos. Deimos is essentially a weapon of destruction. He's very strong, fast, and completely fearless. His physical strength alone likely puts him above most characters in the series, but he is an idiot, and that's where Ezio's advantage comes in. His intelligence and experience will help him. Ezio's faced powerful enemies before. Rodrigo Borgia wielded the Staff of Eden and Ezio still fought against him. Granted, Ezio was wielding the apple, but you get the point. So while Deimos might overpower Ezio in a head-on fight, Ezio wouldn't approach it that way. He'd likely figure out a way to outsmart Deimos and wait for the perfect strike. We also have to remember Deimos went down from a single arrow in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Ezio has taken far more damage, like being shot 3 times, stabbed, and quite a lot more. Ezio has a hidden gun, throwing knives, poison darts, plenty of tools to take advantage of. If Deimos catches Ezio out in the open and just tries to overwhelm him, Ezio might be in trouble. But if Ezio gets the drop on him or if the fight is prolonged, I think Ezio would come out on top. So Deimos goes in 50-50. Maybe I'll move him down to challenging later. We'll see. Let's talk about Crawford Starrick, London's overlord from Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and in my opinion, quite a clown. On paper, Starrick is powerful. He controls a large part of London's economy, politics, and industry, but as a combatant and strategist, he's below average. What's interesting is that Starrick had access to the Shroud of Eden. one of the most powerful pieces of Eden in the entire franchise, and still got taken out by two relatively inexperienced assassins, Jacob and Evie Frye. Granted, the novel Assassin's Creed Underworld said that he was holding back and sort of having fun during the fight, but come on, it's Jacob and Evie. That says a lot. Ezio's faced opponents with similar resources before, but with sharper minds. Compared to the Borgia family, Serre is just a businessman and kind of crazy. If Jacob and Evie were able to take him down in that short of a time, Ezio would do it even quicker. Starrick goes in minor obstacle. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Haytham Kenway, the Grand Master of the Colonial Rite and one of the smartest characters in the entire franchise. Haytham's a rare kind of Templar. He's both intelligent and pragmatic. He's also an exceptional swordsman and an experienced leader. If anyone could predict Ezio's tactics, it'd be Haytham. However, Ezio's versatility would make him incredibly difficult to catch off guard. Haytham might be able to throw Ezio off early on, maybe even set a trap or a fake meeting to try to lure him in. But Ezio's experience as a master assassin would come into play too. In a duel, Haytham might be able to hold his own. He's a very skilled Templar, and if someone like Cesare could hold his own against Ezio for that long, Haytham could probably do it even better. Haytham fought many skilled opponents, took a cannonball explosion, and has done even more things in his novel Assassin's Creed Forsaken. But Ezio's speed, experience, combat skill, and overall battle IQ could give him the win in a prolonged combat encounter. Though I think it is possible for Haytham to win, maybe 3 out of 10 times or something. This would be a chess match more than a brawl, but I could genuinely see it going either way. Haytham took down Reginald Birch, who is a pretty intelligent opponent, so I'm gonna put him in 50-50. Though I still think Ezio would win more often than not. Shay Cormac, the assassin hunter himself. If anyone's experienced in fighting people like Ezio, it's Shay. Shay has all the tools, the training of an assassin, and the discipline and experiences of a Templar. And he has instincts to help detect stealth thanks to his enhanced eagle vision. He's likely one of the few people who could actually spot Ezio before being assassinated. However, while Shay has impressive experience, the assassins he hunted weren't nearly on Ezio's level. Most of them lacked the finesse, discipline, or the versatility that made Ezio dangerous. Ezio also had far more creative tools and methods. He'd find ways to counter Shay's senses using distractions or terrain. Also, Shay doesn't strike me as someone who could outsmart Ezio. He's a decent problem solver, but nowhere near the level of intelligence of his superior Haytham. Shay also isn't a top-tier fighter in my opinion. His best feats were defeating a fort commander and fighting assassin gang bandits. But I don't want to underrate Shay. Shay is a very successful Templar, and he couldn't have accomplished what he did without being skillful. But I think Ezio is more impressive. I'll put Shay in the challenging tier. Next is Tiburón, the enforcer from Assassin's Creed Black Flag. He's a powerhouse. One punch from this guy defeated Edward Kenway early in the game. Edward, even at the end of the game, could not break through the Templars' defense. In a direct fight, Tiburón would likely be a problem. But here's the thing, Ezio's opponents, like the Brutes, are very similar to Tiburón. Even if Ezio can't defeat him in a melee fight, he could always do what Edward did and use his ranged weapons. Tiburón doesn't strike me as someone who's very intelligent, so Ezio probably has an advantage there too. So Tiburón goes in minor obstacle. Alright, now we have Reginald Birch. This man is terrifying in a completely different way. Reginald Birch isn't a fighter, he's a manipulator and more of a strategist. He's arguably the most successful Templar Grand Master in the entire series. He destroyed the British Brotherhood, orchestrated the deaths of multiple assassins, and shaped the future of the global Templar Order. And while we haven't seen him in combat, it's implied that he is around Haytham's level of skill. After all, he is Haytham's mentor and trained him. No one could touch him. Entire brotherhoods failed to assassinate this man. If Ezio went after Birch, he'd have to navigate a web of lies, spies, and traps. Birch would likely know about Ezio long before Ezio ever reached him. Birch is an expert at long-term planning and would likely outsmart Ezio. Even if Ezio could win in a duel, getting to Birch would be nearly impossible. Birch survives Ezio in my opinion. Now let's talk about Mualim, the mentor of Altair and the original traitor of the Brotherhood. This fight would be brutal, not because Mualim is physically stronger, but because he's very intelligent. He knows the assassin's tactics like the back of his hand. And if he's using the Apple of Eden, it's nearly impossible. Mualim was able to completely manipulate Altair, one of the greatest assassins in history, and even toyed with him in combat. Granted, Altair completely destroyed him, but you know, whatever. Ezio could maybe find a creative way to strike, but more likely than not, Mualim would anticipate it. This is one of those cases where Ezio could win if he got lucky or caught him off guard, but Mualim probably would win more often than not. It's also worth mentioning that Mualim could likely have killed Altair if he just stabbed him while Altair was frozen. The only reason he prolonged the fight was because Altair was his student. If some random assassin came to kill him, Mualim probably would not waste his time, so yeah, I have Mualim surviving. Now onto the man who started Ezio's journey, Rodrigo Borgia. Ezio's main enemy, the man behind so many of his early struggles. We already know Ezio beats him, but it's worth noting how long it took. Rodrigo survived assassination attempts, controlled Rome through his manipulation, and wielded the Staff of Eden. Rodrigo isn't a top tier fighter, but he's very smart and cunning. He understands people, politics, and deception. Ezio would eventually win, but it would take some time, as we saw in Assassin's Creed 2. Rodrigo goes in challenging. Now we move on to pure fantasy, King Washington from the Tyranny of King Washington DLC. This version of Washington is a god tier threat. With the Apple and Staff of Eden, he could summon clones, bend reality, and essentially act as an unstoppable tyrant. Connor, who's likely around Ezio's skill level, couldn't even hurt him without magical powers. Washington took over America, has a brainwashed army, and is already an experienced general. Though the Apple likely twisted his mind and he's not as intelligent as he normally would be. A fight between Ezio and Washington would play out the same as Connor's first fight against him, where Connor just got destroyed. Even if Ezio somehow holds his own, Washington will just summon hundreds of Apple of Eden clones and overwhelm Ezio. Unless Ezio in some way gets his hands on a piece of Eden or has Connor's powers, he's cooked. Yeah, Washington is surviving Ezio. And for our final enemy today, we have Bion from Assassin's Creed Origins Desert Oath. My last video was on this guy, so I thought I'd include him here. Bion was the mercenary who single-handedly hunted down the Magi across Egypt, killed Bayek's father, and almost killed Bayek and Aya. I recommend watching my last video on him since I explain more about his story and skills in that. But Bion would be a challenge for Ezio. However, the Magi are not assassins. They lack the same level of stealth and skill Ezio has. Bion might be able to fight Ezio in close combat for a while, but once Ezio figures out his rhythm, it's over. I don't want to put him in challenging since that's the same tier as Shay, and I think Shay will overall be a tougher opponent, but we'll just put him there anyways, he's the last person. And that wraps up today's video. Obviously this was more of a laid back hypothetical discussion rather than a full feat breakdown. If we analyze every piece of lore, some of these results might shift around, but the general idea still stands in my opinion. If you'd like to see me do this same concept for other assassins or Templars, let me know in the comments. Also, if I missed any characters or if you completely disagree with a ranking, drop your thoughts below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you all in the next video.